The Floating World and the Legend of the 5 Bamboo Fly Rods by Gabe Batson. Chapter 7. The Green Fairy. The water I touched in this river, which has passed into the present. His pipe laid unmasked on the scarred workbench. The chessmaker's eyes cast a glance of suspicion throughout the workshop, looking for an anomaly in the progress of the previous day.
Does it not say Baston? What else would you have me expect to see this morning?
He said aloud to the empty room.
The demands of the client serve as an impetus for innovation, but only if the workers are willing to comply and with a good attitude.
The initial shock of some of the requests, though, it felt as if he must steady his feet, as a traveler would, happening upon an adder crossing his path. It's important to train oneself not to reflex 2 steps back.
That is true bravery,
he thought. His pipe smoke rose in the air and smelled sweet. This dark corner of London remained a refuge for men honored for their civility, while their sanity relied on beasties controlling the reins when it came to worldly affairs. Libraries of cloth and exotic timber waited behind the oak panes of the cubbies. Patterns, designs, and carcasses hung from hooks, miles of ledgers filled with the names from European history. He was like a tailor, charged to create utility, but with a beauty that belied detection. It all began with Beau Brummel standing on the street corner. People said he was beautiful because he was plain. The little girl opened her eyes to the street. Sunlight was burning off haze, causing an orange glow. Dust from carriages, pedestrians, manure, and the rising heat. How she found an apprenticeship was caused by an unusual circumstance. But Anjou was an unusual girl. Still without a home, she hadn't any real clothes, so she wore only rags. But craft and skill can overcome sorrow.
It's warm today, very un-Londonish,
she overheard someone say. She peeled back the damp blankets from her shoulders. Sweaty was she, exposed to the sun. Cars, cabs, wagons, broughams in the mail. They rolled, horse-drawn, handsome and quick. She unfolded a discarded coat that made a pillow and dressed, tucking her long hair under a cap. She stowed her blankets in a hole behind a foundation stone. Her eyes were tired. Her bones ached much too much for such a little person. She walked the street in the crowd of people. Daylight bloomed in stages. Women promenaded, entwined in vermilion, sable, and periwinkle. A man stared down at the little Anjou as she hurried along. She heard the clock tower toll, and so panicked and ran.
There, Princess. Honorable Anjou, you're late again. Make time, sweet girl. Don't cry,
she said to herself. She darted past the glass of the storefront workshop.
The cock crowed thrice, child. There's no rest for the desperate in the small. Always late and wasting my time,
admonished the master in a leather apron. She hung her coat in the back room and went to a workbench and set about her task, skiving edges of leather over a wooden horn, polished from use. Deftly, she shaved slivers, tapering to paper thinness. She stopped to strop her blade, and how it sang when she did it well. When she laid a pile of the calfskins, supple and perfect, in front of her master, she turned, but he called her back.
You came in this morning, you went to the back room and hung that wretched thing you call a coat,
he said. Anjou said not a word.
No. You don't do that. When you come in, you go straight to work.
Fen and Doruk saw the little Anjou hurry away. They carried with them one of the rods for sizing. Fen stepped to the master's table and felt the edges of the creamy skins.
The finest hide, sir,
said the master.
Most supple and sweet.
Doruk walked over to Anjou, who was working with the sharp blade.
What is your name?
he asked. Anjou said not a word. He noticed a pile of silk panels. He pulled one down and saw it was shantan raw silk, rich in color and finely stitched.
You did this?
he asked. But little Anjou said not a word. There were trunk frames made of pine wood with polished bronze rivets evenly placed.
And these?
he asked. But little Anju said not a word. He watched her slice a long length of leather with a single stroke of the blade.
Let me see these hands,
he said. He took one little hand and peered at it for a moment. The fingers were pink and soft, her nails closely trimmed.
These are magical hands,
he said.
Where I'm from, it be said you have golden hands.
But quiet and small Anju said not a word.
Good morning, little one. Hurry now. I'm sure there's much left to be done,
said Doruk. Doruk walked over to Fen at the master's table.
The little one,
he said.
She speaks.
Sweet Anju,
she said to herself.
Princess of Beauty, you'll find your way someday, my dear.
A fleshy-nosed and rosy-eared man came into the workshop. His cheeks were flushed from the beer he had for breakfast, which may have been small, but he drank it by the bumpers.
Hello, you castmaker. I like my good man,
he yelled at the master.
Collect what you have of my order. Let's see these things.
The master hurried away, and the man gazed at Anju.
What's the urchin doing? I doubt she even knows.
He lit his pipe. The smoke lurked like a shadow. He watched her slice soft leather, which made him hungry again for roasted beef. He blew smoke in her direction. Busy, Anju did not notice him, and so continued her work. He looked at her brow, sheeny across the flesh. It made him thirsty, despite already being heavily weighted. He belched. Its odor was ripe and deep, but Anju was too busy to be bothered, and so she continued her work. He moved closer and blew a latakia cloud directly at her nostrils. Anju leapt back and glowered at the man, her eyes blazed. The man walked away and said to Doruk,
Beware of the baby snakes, for they haven't yet learned the art of self-control.
Doruk looked at little Anju. She had opened the golden tube and drew out the rod held within. She assembled it and took it with one hand and flexed it some.
You have in thine hands a bamboo angle of the finest make,
said Doruk. Anju held it in the air, inspecting it.
Is that the property of this gentleman? Wicked child, put that down!
Yelled the maker.
You've overstepped your bounds once again!
He walked towards Anju, but Doruk put his straight arm out.
It's all right,
Doruk said.
I want her to see it. Leave it be.
If it pleases thee, Your Honor, this girl is unpredictable. I'm afraid she'll make trouble. She has such clumsy hands,
said the master.
Attend to your business, man, and I'll accept responsibility for anything that happens.
The master walked back to Fen. Doruk looked to Anju. Down upon the rod, she let go a tear. She wiped it away with her hand. Doruk patted her shoulder. Night was endless and dark. Beneath the billions of stars in the sky, Doruk and Anju were standing in the long grasses which swayed in the breeze. They heard an echo of someone calling. Doruk slowly turned his face to see Anju. Her eyes were large and fiery. Her hair floated. Along the hedge, blackberries were glowing, plump and sweet in the moonlight. There was a roar of a waterfall. They heard someone call again, their voice bouncing across the dome of space. Doruk said,
Are you doing this?
Every sound reverberated around them.
You mean you can't?
Asked Anju. Little and sweet was her voice. She lifted from the ground and floated. Her skirt flowed as if caught in a storm. This was a place she knew deep in her heart, one she had been to before, like a memory that has yet come to pass.
I'm afraid, child,
said the brave Doruk.
We must go.
He took the rod from her hand. In an instant, they were back in the workshop. He put it down on the counter and rushed outside. He crouched down to the pavement and clasped his teary face.
Magical, impressionable child. Truly, we cannot leave you here.
Unaware of what had transpired, Fen was speaking to the master maker.
How came you to employ the little girl?
Asked Fen.
Anju, I'm glad to tell ye, sir, your honor. My boy was swimming at a beach. The current was strong and the river tried to take him. He wouldn't say how it happened, and the girl hardly speaks at all, but when she saved him from Johnny, I took pity upon her miserable soul.
He paused. Fen looked over the workbench and picked up a piece of brass. What of the hardware? How will these chests be appointed? He asked.
If it pleases thee, your honor, I shall use jewelry of solid brass, made in France by this clever lad who's perfected this unpickable lock. Isn't it a little cutie?
Fen held the lock of polished brass in his hands. It was smooth and cool, heavy of weight.
Yes, it is nice, as is all this hardware I see here,
he said.
If it pleases thee, your honor, it is jewelry, and so it is called. Hardware would be for a box. These are chests for travel.
Ah, I see, said Fen.
A perfect way to carry a kitty,
said the master with a wink.
You have our measurements. Should we continue with the styling? Absolument,
said the maker.
5 chests, covered in canvas, leather edges, silk interiors, padded, leather handles, all fasteners are of brass and bronze.
That sounds perfect, but we want them distinct from one another so they can be told apart, and we leave for Liverpool on the 9th.
We'll have them done in a canter.
Fen joined Doruk on the pavement and said,
The order is made. We shall have the chests by the time we depart for Liverpool. I wonder if the child will survive that long,
said Doruk, looking at Fen with red eyes.
Did you not see what happened? The child took the rod to another world. Like wise Padamabu, when he took the rod, strange magic occurred. Am I to believe this child is up to the same thing? What happened when we tried to hold the rods ourselves? Nothing. When we wet them, just as Padamabu did, still nothing. Truly something else is at play here. I suspect the sweet child awaits a destiny far beyond our imagining. Do you remember when I found you in Egypt? How could I forget? What can we do for this child? Fine and fair, Doruk, with a heart bigger than the whole world.
Doruk set to it thinking, reciting adverbs as he was prone to do when he was puzzled with a problem. For some strange reason, the recitation of these most contemptible words relaxed his anxious temper and soothed his worried mind.
Gingerly, righteously, haughtily,
he said.
Playfully, passionately, patiently,
he went on.
Doruk,
said Fen.
We must go. We have a dinner date. We cannot leave our friend waiting.
They walked down the street, but committed and wise Doruk, true to his conundrum, continued to faithfully recite the detestable and much-hated adverbs.
Boastfully, carefully, bashfully, blindly, knavishly, brightly, carefully, cheerfully, patiently. You already said that last one. So I had,
said Doruk sheepishly.
Noisily, obediently, obnoxiously, painfully, offensively, powerfully, promptly, quaintly, zestfully. Zestfully. I like that one, said Fen. Remember, adverbs describe the degree of action. Dreamily, enthusiastically, ferociously, fervently, frenetically, majestically, mechanically, mysteriously, hungrily, zertzily. Zertzily? Is that really a word?
Asked Fen haughtily.
I say, I beseech thee, let me repeat, my dear Fen,
said Doruk gently as he took Fen sweetly by the hand.
I say, I really do beseech thee, dear Fen, do not continue to interrupt me in the midst of this conundrum. I wouldn't dream of it, my dear sweet friend,
said Fen apologetically. They moved to continue their journey towards their destination on St. James's Street.
Gracefully, gratefully, keenly,
recited the fair and wise Doruk enthusiastically.
Wait a second,
said Fen suspiciously.
Just as I suspected. What?
said Doruk irritably.
Shit,
said Fen nervously.
You better stop it. I believe they're getting away from us. What do you mean?
asked Doruk defensively.
Stop reciting adverbs. They're getting everywhere,
said Fen frantically.
Oh, I see what you mean,
Doruk said bashfully.
There goes another one,
said Fen miserably.
We have a terrible problem on our hands. Okay,
said Doruk sympathetically.
I'll stop.
A few minutes of silence passed as they walked along. Fen spoke.
Are you done? Yes,
said Doruk.
I think so.
They entered a gentleman's club along the row. White columned with plumes of smoke, softly blown, ascended in the unseasonable heat of London summer. The pavement was narrow by its door. Inside was filled with leather chairs and couches, carpets from the Orient. Most of the men were talking and smoking. A few white-whiskered chaps snoozed for the moiety of the day, with their reading fallen to their laps. Doruk and Fen greeted their cheery friend by the fireplace.
Delightful day for it,
said Fen. Their friend stood in his impeccably tailored attire. He took a few moments to gaze into each of Fen and Doruk's eyes as he shook their hands. On each finger he wore a signet ring. No slouch was he.
If there were ever a better way to pass the time, I can't help thinking that conversation amongst friends couldn't be improved upon. Gentlemen, I always find a wonderful day in London is best experienced in the spirit of shared interest with companions, such as yourselves, who are of warm and intelligent natures. It's delightful to see you both again. I cannot wait to see what transpires during our time together.
It's wonderful to see you too, Marston. How goes your day? Said Fen. Wonderful was Marston's day. These times were free from worry, he said.
Lovely,
said Fen.
how fortunate are we?
Indeed we are, thought Marston.
Doruk, come now. What say you?
Asked Marston.
Perhaps the child should come with us,
said Doruk intensely. Fen exasperatingly gave Doruk a dirty look. Doruk solemnly looked back at Fen.
You gentlemen shouldn't be using adverbs in here. It's against club rules,
said Marston. Said a dour-looking individual as he moved the Times aside and peered askance in their direction.
We wouldn't want things to go wrong for us on St. James's Street,
said Fen to Doruk.
By the way, you fellas look smashing,
said Marston.
Well, thank you. We owe it all to you and your friend, Mr. Henry Poole. He took care of us well. He even had a contraption that attached one's shirt tails to one's stockings to keep them from falling down.
That sounds terribly Italian, doesn't it? I'm afraid you'd be in for a dig on that one.
We're well prepared as we stand,
Yes, I don't imagine you'd need white tie fig traveling in Western America.
said Marston.
but I'll have a bon chapeau.
Oh yes, it is a cracker. There's a pecuniary advantage to keeping things of high quality. I say, Doruk, what's this child you're on about?
A child of indeterminable magic. My heart breaks. We cannot leave her behind.
A girl?
Asked Marston.
She works for the trunk maker,
Said Fen.
How is she an apprentice? Where are her parents?
Asked Marston.
Perhaps her mother was a raven.
Said Doruk.
But what could be done?
Asked Fen.
We must gain her confidence and liberate her from the trunk maker.
Said Doruk.
I have an idea,
Said Marston.
and it will work if we're quick.
That evening, Doruk and Fen asked around the West End about a little girl named Anju. They asked a huckster at his cart, but he said he didn't know, though the amateur mendicant might. The amateur mendicant said he didn't know either, but the lady selling flowers might. The lady selling flowers said there was a little girl who spent nights around there. She hid things behind a stone,
She doesn't have much, poor little thing.
said the lady selling flowers. Fen and Doruk waited until after dark to see if Anju came back to collect her things from behind the stone. Cool was the night, and welcome it was. Anju had worked the whole day and was tired. She thought of the experience she had with the bamboo rod and the man. It made her smile with excitement, but she didn't think much deeper than that. Amazing things have happened throughout her short life. To her, it gave an inkling that there was something more, as if something was missing. The streets were dusty as carriages trotted past with gentlemen and ladies in evening wear buzzing in and out of Mayfair. She walked to the stone and rolled it back. She pulled out her blankets and found a place where she could sleep, one that would be comfortable and safe. She stayed in the park before, but she was woken by having water thrown on her by an irate gardener. She had also slept behind shrubbery on benches and in the eaves of buildings, but had been roused by constables. The task of finding a small place added to the fatigue of each day. She laid her bedding and propped herself so she could look about while keeping warm. Doruk and Fen watched Anju prepare her bed.
Even without a garden, a flower can grow,
said Doruk. They crossed the street. Their air was soft and welcoming. The mellow anticipation of the city at evening chimed in their ears.
Anju,
said Doruk. He tried to whisper, but it came out as a hoarse yell. She startled and clutched her blankets, pushing her back against the wall.
Do not be afraid.
Said Doruk.
We're kidnapping you.
No!
She yelled.
Calm, child.
Said Fen.
You'll have to forgive my friend here. Sometimes his enthusiasm overcomes his wit.
Anju, said Doruk, I saw what you did with the knife. I saw what you did with the silk. I saw what you did with the angle made of bamboo. We're going to America. Sweet Anju lowered her blanket and stared at the men. Fen told her of his journey, of Padamabu, Megadagik, and of Edkaman. He told her how they battled pirates and how he was chained to a rock by the sinister Prince Akar.
Do you want her to come with us or not?
Asked Doruk.
Don't tell her of such terrible things. Anju, we're going to find a kingdom in the clouds and be richly rewarded when we deliver 5 magical rods made of bamboo.
We wish to free you, just as Doruk did for me,
said Fen.
Is this a trick?
Asked Anju.
Would we say if it was? Come, let's take a walk.
They followed a side street until they found a noble house with an overgrown lot across. The 3 slipped down the alley away from view. Fen carried the tube out of which he drew a rod. He assembled it and handed it to Anju. He and Doruk put their hands on her shoulders.
Watch this,
said Doruk as he poured a little water upon the rod. The sky shifted and turned bluebell. The trees sang with birds and the sun was hot. The air smelled of lavender, hay, and of dusky pine. Anju held the rod in her hands and a fierce wind blew across her face. It was a world like a living song. They walked to a cliff's edge over a massive waterfall, billowing mist. They glimpsed a rainbow in the fogginess of the expanse.
What is this place, Anju?
Asked Doruk. His voice sounded far away.
Don't ask me that,
said Anju.
I'm afraid of the answers.
She began to float in the air. The men grabbed her ankles. She was scared and dropped the rod. The 3 of them woke in the dark alley.
What was that place?
Asked Anju.
That floating world.
Strange things are afoot,
said Fen.
We must make haste on our journey.
Each night, Fen and Doruk visited little Anju, bringing her sweets and pies, but they dared not use any of the fly rods again. Anju was afraid of their power. The morning they left for Liverpool, Fen and Doruk were in their rooms when a boy brought them a note.
It's from Marsden,
said Fen. They hurried to meet Marsden, who they thanked profusely for the invaluable help that he and his brethren had extended. Marsden said wise Padamabu was a friend to whom he owed a great deal. He smiled and handed Fen a document with a large red seal. At the trunk maker's shop, the 5 rods were stacked and ready for their journey, and they looked beautiful. Fen was speaking to the trunk maker while Doruk loaded the carriage.
I thank thee, Your Honor,
said the trunk maker.
Your fishing rods will certainly be well cared for.
There's another matter I wish to raise,
said Fen.
Anything, sir?
The little girl. We wish to take her with us. We've talked with Anju, and she'd like to go.
Anju?
Said the master. He looked over to the little girl. His brow wrinkled and the corner of his lip trembled.
But you can't. I need her. I'll surely miss those hands.
Perhaps this will sway your argument.
Fen handed the master the folded paper with the large red seal. The master saw the seal and stayed his trembling hand.
Please, Your Honor,
he said.
Do you not know the punishment for counterfeiting a seal of this type? It's death.
Read the letter,
said Fen, holding it out. With trepidation, the master took the document and gazed at the seal. His bottom lip quivered. With a knife from the bench, he cut it open and unfolded the thick and perfumed paper. His hands dropped to the bench, and he hung his head.
Where to take the girl, then?
Asked Fen.
Yes. This day we will remember always, sir,
the master said. Anju went to the door but turned before leaving and walked to the master. She left a pastry on his workbench. When she climbed into the carriage, Doruk yelled with joy.
We're on our way to America with our new friend. After all these years, my dear sweet Doruk,
said Fen. He clasped Doruk upon the knee and laughed.